Summer of '78 was the year the dust got mean. Luther Gaines rode into Esperanza that Tuesday morning, same as always. Leather creak, his mare's hooves on hard dirt, the smell of creosote burning in the heat. Town square looked normal enough, market stalls, folks buying flour and nails. Then he heard it. The auctioneer's gavel. Crack. Sold to Clayton Marsh, $50. A woman's scream cut through the crowd. Luther saw her running, bare feet bleeding on the stones, clutching something against her chest. Dark hair, wild, face scarred down the left side. She collapsed at the base of the auction block. "That's mine," she gasped. "My husband's land, please." The auctioneer turned away. Marsh stepped down, smiling. Luther dismounted. The crowd parted like they always did when a man decided to see instead of look away. He knelt beside her, touched something in his pocket without thinking. His dead wife's saint medal, warm from his body heat. The woman clutched a piece of paper. Spanish words. Royal seal catching sunlight like a promise. "You hurt?" he asked. She looked up at him with eyes that had already learned not to hope. Luther unscrewed his canteen and held it out. She stared at it like it might be a trick. Her hands shook when she reached for it. That's when he saw the scars. Rope burns, thick and pale around both wrists, old ones, the kind that told a story nobody should have to live. "Slow," he said. "You'll choke." She drank anyway. Water ran down her chin, making tracks in the dust on her face. When she lowered the canteen, she was crying, not sobbing, just silent tears that seemed to surprise her. "Thank you." "You hurt elsewhere?" "Everywhere that doesn't show." She pulled the document against her chest. "Can you read Spanish?" Luther shook his head. "But I know someone who might." Behind them, boots scraped wood. Luther stood and turned. Clayton Marsh, 40-something and dressed like he'd just stepped off a train from back east. Expensive suit, soft hands, eyes like a banker counting your last dollar. "Morning, Gaines?" Marsh's voice carried honey and threat in equal measure. "Didn't know you were in the charity business." "Didn't know you were in the land-stealing business." "Careful," Marsh smiled. "That paper she's holding is worthless. County verified it. All legal and proper." The woman tried to stand. Luther offered his hand and she took it. She stood straight despite everything, chin up. "My husband died for this land," she said, voice steady now. 6 months, I've been fighting your lies. Unfortunately tragic." Marsh brushed dust from his sleeve. "But the law's the law, Mrs. Vargas." He said her name like it was something dirty. Luther caught movement in his peripheral vision. The land office clerk stood in the doorway across the square, watching. When Marsh glanced his way, the clerk nodded. Just once, quick as a snake's tongue. Luther filed that away. "I'll take her to the mission," Luther said. "Father Brennan reads Spanish." "Do what you like." Marsh mounted his horse, a black gelding too fine for this country. He paused, looking down at Luther with something that might have been pity. "Your mortgage comes due soon, doesn't it, Gaines? 80-something days? Be ashamed to lose everything over sentimentality." He rode off. The crowd that had gathered started to drift. One woman spit near Mrs. Vargas's feet before walking away. Luther helped her to his horse. She moved like her ribs hurt. "You don't have to—" "I know." He rode slow. She sat behind him, that document pressed between them. Neither spoke. The mission sat at the edge of town, adobe and timber, cross-catching the late morning sun. Father Brennan was in the garden pulling weeds from around his vegetables, Irish, 60-some years old, with hands bent from arthritis. "Luther." He stood, brushing dirt from his cassock. Then he saw Mrs. Vargas. "Mother of God. She needs help, Father, and someone who can read that." Luther nodded at the document. They went inside where it was cooler, the smell of incense and old wood. Mrs. Vargas laid the paper on the table like it was made of glass. Father Brennan put on his spectacles and leaned close. His hands started shaking. "Where did you get this?" "My husband's family," she said. "It's been in the Vargas line since 1821, before Texas was even—" "This is authentic." Father Brennan looked up, eyes wide behind his glasses. "Royal seal, Spanish land grant, predates statehood by 25 years. Luther felt something shift in his chest. "County says it's worthless." "County's wrong." The priest traced the words with one bent finger. "Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, 1848. All legitimate Spanish and Mexican land grants were supposed to be honored by the new government. This," he tapped the seal, "this is legal proof of ownership." Mrs. Vargas sat down hard. "Then why—" "Because the county clerk can't read Spanish," Luther said quietly. Or won't. Father Brennan nodded. There have been problems. Other Mexican families losing land to what they call translation errors. How many? Luther asked. 3 that I know of, maybe more. The church bell rang outside. Noon. Somewhere in town, Marsh was probably celebrating. Luther looked at Mrs. Vargas. She was staring at the document like it might disappear. We need the original survey map, Father Brennan said, to prove the boundaries match the grant. Without that, it's just paper against the county's word. Where would we find it? Archives. But they're... The priest hesitated. Extensive. Could take days. Weeks even. Mrs. Vargas looked up at Luther, really looked at him. Why are you helping me? He touched his pocket where the saint medal rested. Thought about his wife Sarah, about all the times he'd stayed silent when he should have spoken, because I'm tired of watching wrong things happen. Outside, a horse passed. Through the window, Luther caught a glimpse of Marsh's silver belt buckle flashing in the sun. The land office smelled like tobacco and old paper. Luther held the door for Mrs. Vargas. She hesitated at the threshold like she was walking into a trap. Maybe she was. The clerk sat behind his desk, fingers already stained brown from his morning chew. He didn't look up when they entered. Whoa. Help you? Luther set the Spanish land grant on the desk. Need this processed. Now the clerk looked up, saw Mrs. Vargas. His expression went from bored to hostile in half a heartbeat. Can't process foreign documents. It's not foreign, she said. It's older than this territory. The clerk pushed it back across the desk without touching it. Says here, he tapped a ledger book, Vargas' claim was abandoned, legal and proper, already sold at auction this morning. That's a lie. Her voice stayed level, but Luther heard the rage underneath. I've been working that land since my husband died. I've paid every... You calling county records false, girl? The word girl hung in the air like a slap. Luther put his hand on the desk, not threatening, just present. Show us the translation you used. The clerk's jaw worked his tobacco. He pulled out a sheet of paper, slid it across. Luther couldn't read Spanish, but he could read a man's face. This clerk was smiling. Mrs. Vargas looked at the translation, then at her original grant. Her hands curled into fists. This isn't even close. Half these words don't mean... That's the official county translation. The clerk leaned back in his chair. If you got a problem with it, there's a filing fee for reinterpretation. How much? Luther asked. $500. The clerk smiled wider. Cash. The number hit like a fist. Mrs. Vargas's face went pale. Luther's ranch had maybe $200 in working capital, and that was before the drought killed most of his herd. That's extortion, Luther said. That's the law. The clerk folded his hands over his gut. Take it or leave it. Mrs. Vargas picked up her document with shaking hands. Luther followed her outside. She made it 3 steps before she stopped, just breathing. Her shoulders were rigid with the effort of not falling apart. I can't pay that. I know. Thank you for trying. She turned to walk away. Where are you going? I don't know. She looked at him with eyes that had given up. Somewhere that isn't here. The land office door opened behind them. Luther heard the boots first, expensive leather, then that voice, smooth as creek water over sharp stones. Mrs. Vargas, Mr. Gaines. Marsh stood in the doorway, backlit by the afternoon sun. He held a sealed envelope in one hand. I was just conducting some business with our friend inside, and he walked down the steps. Coincidentally, I have something for you, Gaines. He held out the envelope. Luther took it. Bank seal. He broke it open and read. The words blurred together at first, then sharpened into a knife. Mortgage payment due in full, 82 days. Amount owed, $200. Failure to pay will result in foreclosure proceedings. My brother-in-law mentioned you might be coming up short this season, Marsh said. Drought's been hard on everyone. Luther looked up. Your brother-in-law? At the bank, yes. Marsh's smile never touched his eyes. He's concerned about you. We both are. Which is why I'm prepared to make you an offer. Fair market value for your ranch, 60% of assessment, cash in hand. You could start fresh somewhere else. The math was simple and brutal. Marsh was offering $1,200 for a ranch worth $2,000 and threatening foreclosure if Luther refused. Mrs. Vargas was staring at Luther's face, reading what he'd just learned. Of course, Marsh continued. The offer stands only if you're reasonable about things. My brother-in-law has some concerns about extending credit to men involved in frivolous legal battles. Bad risk, you understand. There it was, the trap laid bare. Help Mrs. Vargas fight the county, equals lose the ranch. Stay silent, equals keep everything his father built. Luther's hand went to his pocket. The Saint medal felt heavier than it should. That's quite an offer, he said slowly. I thought you'd see reason. Marsh pulled out a silver pocket watch, expensive, flashy, and checked the time. Think it over, but not too long. 82 days goes by fast. He tipped his hat to Mrs. Vargas like a gentleman and walked back toward the land office. Through the window, Luther saw him shake hands with the clerk, saw money change hands, not even trying to hide it. Mrs. Vargas touched Luther's arm. I won't let you lose everything for me. It's not. Yes, it is. She pulled her land grant close. I'm not pretty enough, not white enough, not American enough for justice here. I know that now. You have a life. Keep it. She walked away before he could answer. Luther stood there holding the foreclosure notice, watching her go. Her bare feet left small prints in the dust. Behind him, the land office door opened. The clerk spit tobacco juice onto the street. Smart choice, Gaines. Man's got to look after his own. Luther turned and looked at him. Really looked. Saw the stains on his vest, the contempt in his smile, the casual cruelty of a small man with borrowed power. He thought about Sarah's grave on the hill behind his ranch, about dying with that same look on his face, about 82 days feeling like forever when you spent them hating yourself. Luther found Mrs. Vargas at the mission. She was sitting on the church steps, that document in her lap, staring at nothing. Father Brennan stood in the doorway like a sentry. She won't talk, the priest said quietly. Won't come inside. Luther sat down beside her, didn't say anything, just sat. The sun beat down on them both. A dust devil spun across the empty street. You should go home, she said finally. Probably. I mean it. 82 days isn't much time. No, ma'am, it isn't. She turned to look at him. Then why are you still here? Luther watched the dust devil die against a wall. My wife Sarah used to say I was good at keeping quiet. Meant it as a compliment, I think. Steady, reliable, didn't make waves. He rubbed his face. She died 2 years back. Childbirth. Baby didn't make it either. I'm sorry. Don't be. What I'm sorry about is all the times I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. Mexican ranch hands getting cheated on wages. Chinese workers at the rail yard treated like animals. I'd see it, feel bad about it, do nothing. He looked at her. Sarah died thinking I was a good man. I'd like to actually be one before I join her. Mrs. Vargas was quiet for a long time. Your ranch is dirt and timber. You're a person. Father Brennan cleared his throat behind them. I may have found something. They followed him inside to a back room Luther had never seen, shelves floor to ceiling, crammed with record books and document cases, the smell of mildew and old leather. The town founder's estate was donated to the church when he died, Father Brennan said. His widow is still alive. Doc Thatcher, I sent word. She's bringing something. As if summoned, footsteps sounded in the hall. A woman entered, 50-some years old, carrying a leather case. Sharp eyes behind wire spectacles, she wore practical clothes and moved like someone who'd seen too much death to waste time on nonsense. Father says you need old survey maps. Doc Thatcher set the case on the table. Dust puffed up. These were my husband's. He helped survey the territory in '45. She opened the case. Inside, rolled maps tied with string that looked ready to crumble. Father Brennan lifted one out carefully, untied it, spread it across the table. The paper was brown with age, but the lines were clear. Property boundaries marked in careful ink, Spanish labels, longitude and latitude notations. Mrs. Vargas leaned close. Her finger traced a section. That's my land. Agua Sagrada. Sacred water, Father Brennan translated. Luther saw it too. The boundaries matched her grant exactly. 200 acres. And there, marked with a small cross, a spring. That's the only reliable water source for 5 miles, Doc Thatcher said, especially in a drought year. Luther's stomach went cold. He knew that spring, had wondered why his well still had water when everyone else's was running dry. His cattle drank from a creek that started. It feeds downhill, Mrs. Vargas said quietly. She was looking at the map, following the blue line that marked the water's path, following it right to where Luther's ranch would be. Their eyes met. Your ranch, she said. The water comes from your land. Luther felt the world shift under him. Has to be. The elevation, the direction. Father Brennan traced the line with his finger. According to this, the spring originates here, on the Vargas property, flows through 3 properties total, including mine. Luther sat down. Which means if your land grant isn't recognized, whoever bought it controls the water rights, Doc Thatcher finished. And in a drought year, that means controlling who survives and who sells. The pieces fell into place like a bad hand of cards. Marsh didn't just want Mrs. Vargas's land. He wanted the water. Wanted to choke out every rancher downstream until they sold cheap, buy it all up, build an empire on other people's thirst. You need me, Mrs. Vargas said to Luther. You need my land grant recognized or you lose everything anyway. I suppose I do, she laughed. Not happy, just exhausted. So your help isn't charity after all. Does it matter? I don't know. She looked at the map, at her grant, at him. Is this why you're helping me? The water? Luther thought about lying, about making himself look noble, but she'd asked for honest. Found out about the water 30 seconds ago, he said. But I won't pretend it doesn't change things. Makes it practical instead of just right. Maybe that's worse. Maybe it's better. I don't know. Doc Thatcher rolled up the map. Well, whatever your reasons, you'll need this as evidence, and you'll need it authenticated by someone with authority. The county clerk won't, Mrs. Vargas started. The county clerk is a bought man, Doc Thatcher said flatly. But there's a district judge circuit riding through in 3 weeks, federal authority, higher than county. If you can present a solid case, 3 weeks, Luther did the math, still leaves 60 days on my mortgage. If you're lucky, Doc Thatcher said. If you're not, Marsh will find a way to move faster. Father Brennan carefully rolled Mrs. Vargas's land grant. There's something else you should know. I asked around quietly. 3 other Mexican families have lost land in the past year. Same pattern. Translation errors, filing fees, all their properties went to Marsh, Luther finished. The priest nodded. Mrs. Vargas stood. Her hands were steady now, some kind of decision made. Then we're not fighting for one property. We're fighting a system. Outside, a horse went past. Through the dusty window, Luther saw Marsh's silver belt buckle flash in the fading light. Luther took his horse to Freeman's Forge the next morning. The anvil was already ringing when he arrived. Steady rhythm, honest work. Tobias Freeman stood at the fire, hammer in hand, shaping hot iron like it was clay. A black man in his 50s, scarred hands and military bearing. Former Buffalo soldier who'd bought his freedom with blood and kept it with skill. Gaines. Toby didn't stop working. Heard you're keeping interesting company. Horse needs shoeing. Horse needed shoeing 2 weeks ago. Toby plunged the iron into water. Steam hissed up. But you're here now because you need to talk where Marsh's people aren't watching. Luther tied his mare to the post. That obvious? Man doesn't survive what I've survived by being blind. Toby selected another shoe from his rack, examined it. You're helping the Vargas woman. Trying to. Don't. Toby's hammer came down hard. Once, twice. The rhythm was angry. 3 other Mexican families tried to fight. Rojas, Delgado, Moreno, all lost. Couldn't afford the fees. Couldn't read the English papers they were signing. Father Brennan mentioned. Father Brennan talks. I watch. Toby fitted the shoe to Luther's mare's hoof, checking the angle. Rojas' family had their barn burned down the night before their hearing. Delgado's daughter got run off the road by a wagon, broke her leg. Moreno's son got arrested for theft. Charges dropped after they signed over their deed. The anvil went silent. Luther felt the weight of it. Marsh? Can't prove it. That's the point. Toby resumed his work, softer now. And there's something else. Mrs. Vargas's husband. He didn't just die. He was murdered. Luther's hands went cold. You know this how? Toby set down his hammer, looked Luther straight in the eye. Because I saw it. The words hung in the forge's heat. April 12th, 6 months back, I was riding home late from a job, saw 3 men at the Vargas place, saw them tie her to the porch post, watched her husband come out fighting. Toby's voice stayed level, but his hands shook. They beat him, dragged him into the yard. One man wore a silver belt buckle, big as a fist, saw it flash in the moonlight. They argued about whether to burn the house with her inside, decided just to leave her tied, let the ropes cut, let her watch her husband bleed out. Luther couldn't breathe. You didn't... I'm a black man in Texas. Toby picked up his hammer again. Who would I tell? County sheriff. He drinks with Marsh every Saturday. Judge? Already decided the land was abandoned. My testimony would have gotten her killed and me hung. The hammer came down. Sparks flew. So yes, I saw it. I did nothing. I live with that. Another strike. But I'm telling you now, those rope burns on her wrists? That's from being tied for 3 hours while her husband died 10 feet away. Your wife's Saint metal won't protect you from men like that. Luther touched his pocket. The metal was there, warm as always. How'd you know about? Saw you fingering it yesterday in the square. Sarah's. I shot her horse plenty of times. Good woman. Died too young. Toby met his eyes. She wouldn't want you dead too. Luther stood there listening to the forge fire crackle and pop, smelling hot metal and coal smoke, thinking about rope burns and a woman tied to watch murder. That silver buckle, he said quietly. You'd recognize it? Every detail. Luther mounted his horse. Might need you to. If I testify, I'm dead. If we all stay silent, we're already dead, just still walking. He rode toward town, toward whatever came next. The banker intercepted him in the town square. Mid-afternoon, market day, plenty of witnesses. Luther recognized the theater of it before the man even spoke. Mr. Gaines. The banker's voice carried like he wanted it to. I was hoping to catch you. Luther dismounted. Mrs. Vargas stood near the general store with Father Brennan. She'd gone still, watching. About your mortgage extension request. Didn't request one. Oh. The banker pulled papers from his coat. But with your drought losses and your charitable activities, I assumed you'd need accommodation. People were stopping to listen. The blacksmith, the milliner. 3 ranch hands from the Delaney spread. An audience gathering for a public shaming. Clayton Marsh appeared from the land office. Coincidentally, his silver belt buckle caught the sun, big as a plate. Ornate scrollwork, impossible to miss. We're offering special terms, the banker continued. Louder now. If you focus on your own affairs. Your father built that ranch, didn't he? Would be ashamed to lose it over a woman you barely know. Luther felt every eye on him, felt the trap close. What kind of special terms? Standard extension, 6 months additional time, reasonable interest. The banker smiled. Contingent, of course, on you maintaining good standing with the bank. We can't extend credit to men embroiled in frivolous legal disputes. There it was, clean and surgical. Help Mrs. Vargas equals foreclosure in 82 days. Abandon her equals keep his ranch, his father's legacy, Sarah's grave on the hill. Marsh stepped forward. It's a generous offer, Gaines. More than generous. All you have to do is stop wasting time on lost causes. Mrs. Vargas had moved closer. Luther could see her face now. She looked like she was watching him drown and couldn't reach the shore. The banker pulled out another document, unfolded it slowly, let everyone see the official seal. This is a preliminary foreclosure notice. 82 days, Mr. Gaines, your mortgage payment in full, $2,100, or the bank takes possession. The land your father cleared, the house he built. Your wife's grave is on that hill, isn't it? He paused. Be a terrible thing, her resting there while strangers work the land. Someone in the crowd muttered, Man's got to look after his own. Another voice, Can't help everyone. Luther's hand found the saint medal. He thought about Sarah, about the times she'd hinted that he should speak up, stand up, be more than silent and steady, about the disappointment he'd sometimes seen in her eyes, about dying with his father's land intact and his soul foreclosed. Mrs. Vargas stepped forward. Her voice carried clear and strong. Mr. Gaines has already done more than anyone had a right to expect. I won't let him lose everything for me. Sensible, Marsh said. See, even she understands. Mrs. Vargas turned to Luther. Her eyes held his. I'm not pretty, Mr. Gaines. I'm scarred. I'm Mexican in a white man's territory. I'm not worth... Stop. Luther's voice came out rougher than he meant. He looked at the banker, at Marsh, at the silver belt buckle that had flashed in moonlight while a man bled out, at the crowd watching him choose. He thought about Toby's words, about 3 families who'd tried to fight and lost, about a woman tied to a porch post for 3 hours, about 82 days feeling like forever when you spent them being someone you hated. Luther pulled the foreclosure notice from the banker's hand, folded it, put it in his pocket next to the saint medal. Where does her property line start? He asked. The crowd went silent. Marsh's face darkened. You're making a mistake. Made worse ones. Luther looked at Mrs. Vargas. Lived with them longer. The banker stepped back like Luther had pulled a gun. You understand what this means? You'll lose everything. Maybe, but I'll keep my eyes open when I do it. He turned his back on them, offered his arm to Mrs. Vargas. She took it after a moment's hesitation. They walked through the silent crowd together. Behind them, Marsh's voice carried cold and certain. 82 days, Gaines. Then we'll see what your principles are worth. They rode to Luther's ranch in silence. The land stretched out brown and thirsty, his cattle scattered and thin. The windmill stood still. Not enough wind, not enough water pressure. His father had built this place from nothing. Now Luther was choosing to risk it for a woman he'd known 3 days. He helped her down from the horse. She moved stiff, like her ribs still hurt from whatever had happened at that auction. You didn't have to do that, she said. I know. 82 days. I can count. He led the horse toward the corral. You hungry? She followed him inside. The house was bachelor sparse, clean but empty, a single plate drying by the wash basin, one chair at the table. The smell of old coffee and loneliness. He made eggs and biscuits while she sat quiet. When he set the plate in front of her, she stared at it like she'd forgotten what food looked like. Eat. She did, slowly at first, then faster. When had she eaten last? After, he took her outside, pulled his rifle from the saddle scabbard. What? You'll need to protect yourself. And your land. He checked the Winchester, made sure it was unloaded for teaching. You ever shoot? No. Time to learn. He set up tin cans on the corral fence, showed her how to hold the rifle, how to sight down the barrel. Her hands shook. It's heavy. You'll get used to it. He adjusted her stance, moved her elbow. Professional, careful not to crowd her. Breathe out slow, squeeze the trigger, don't pull. She fired. The shot went wide by yards. She jerked back from the recoil. Again. I missed. Everyone misses the first time. Again. She fired 6 more times. Each shot got closer. On the 8th, she clipped the edge of a can. It spun off the fence with a metallic ring. Something changed in her face. Not quite a smile, but close. You're a natural. Luther took the rifle, reloaded it. Practice every day. Don't hesitate if someone comes at you wrong. Like they came at my husband? The question hung between them. Toby saw it, Luther said quietly. Told me this morning, 3 men, 1 wore a silver buckle. Her face went white, then red. He saw everything. And said nothing? Her voice broke. I thought I was going crazy. Thought maybe I'd imagined. The sheriff said Juan probably fought with drifters, that I was too traumatized to remember right. Sheriff lied. Toby couldn't testify without getting himself killed. Black man's word against white land grabbers. You know how that goes. She sat down hard on the porch step, put her face in her hands, not crying, just breathing through rage so old it had settled in her bones. Luther sat beside her, gave her space but stayed close. I keep thinking about the ropes, she said finally. How they tied them tight enough to cut. How I could hear Juan calling my name. And I couldn't move, couldn't help, couldn't do anything but watch. She touched her wrists unconsciously. They wanted me to watch. That was the point. I know. You don't. You can't. No, ma'am, I can't. Luther looked at the horizon. But I know what it's like to watch something wrong happen and do nothing. My wife died thinking I was a good man. I'd like to actually be one. She turned to look at him. Why? Why what? Why help me? The water rights? You said you just found out yesterday. Before that, why risk anything? Luther thought about it. About Sarah's disappointed eyes. About Toby's hammer and the families who'd lost everything. About rope burns and a man dying in his own yard. Because I'm tired, he said finally. Tired of being quiet. Tired of watching. Tired of waking up ashamed. She studied his face. I'm not pretty, Mr. Gaines. I noticed. I'm scarred. I'm not proper. I'm not American enough for most folks' liking. I noticed that too. Then why? Luther stood, held out his hand. Because pretty fades and proper lies, and American is just a word men use to steal things. But honest lasts. She took his hand, let him pull her up. Is that what you think I am? Honest? You stood up in that town square and told the truth even when it would have been easier to lie. Even when lying would have saved you. He handed her the rifle. That's about as honest as it gets. She held the weapon like it mattered now, like it was more than metal and wood. What do we do next? We find evidence, build a case for when that district judge comes through, and we pray we've got 60 days before Marsh decides to solve his problems the way he solved your husband. Her jaw set. Let him try. Luther saw it then. What Marsh and the banker and the whole town had missed. She wasn't broken. She was furious. The grief and trauma had hardened into something sharp enough to cut. Tomorrow we ride to the other families, Luther said. The ones Toby mentioned. Find out what they remember, what proof they kept. They'll be scared. Probably, but maybe less scared if we're asking together. She nodded, started to go inside, then stopped. Mr. Gaines? Luther. Luther. She turned the name over like she was testing it. Thank you. For the rifle lesson. For the she gestured at everything. This. You're welcome. And Luther? She met his eyes. I'm sorry you're going to lose your ranch because of me. Haven't lost it yet. 82 days. 81 now. He smiled without humor. Best make them count. She went inside. Luther sat on the porch, watching the sun drop toward the horizon. His cattle moved like ghosts through the brown grass. The windmill creaked, but didn't turn. Somewhere out there, Marsh was planning his next move. The banker was preparing foreclosure papers. The land office clerk was probably laughing into his tobacco. Luther touched the Saint medal in his pocket. Thought about Sarah buried on the hill. Hope you don't mind, he said to the empty air. About the ranch, about her, about any of it. The wind picked up, just a little, enough to make the windmill blades creak and groan, not an answer, but not silence either. Sunday morning, Luther brought Mrs. Vargas to church. The whole town saw them ride in together, saw him help her down from the horse, saw him offer his arm like she was a lady instead of what the gossips called her. The whispers started before they reached the steps. Living in sin, probably. Using her for the water rights, I heard. Shameful, and him with Sarah barely cold in the ground. Luther kept walking. Mrs. Vargas's hand trembled on his arm, but she didn't pull away. They sat in the back pew. Marsh family sat up front, prominent, proper, wearing their corruption like Sunday clothes. The preacher was halfway through his sermon when he shifted topics, subtle at first, then less so. Charity is godly, brothers and sisters. The Lord calls us to help the downtrodden. But, he paused, let the word hang. Association with dubious elements can lead good men astray, can make them forget their true responsibilities to their community, to their heritage, to the memory of their departed. Mrs. Vargas went rigid beside him, started to stand, Luther's hand on her arm. Stay. He's talking about, I know, stay. The preacher continued, more pointed now, about the dangers of misplaced sympathy, about the importance of proper boundaries, about maintaining the standards that made a community strong. Mrs. Vargas stared straight ahead. Her face was stone, but her hands shook in her lap. After the service, the congregation filed out. Town women pulled their skirts aside as Mrs. Vargas passed. Men looked through her like she was glass. One woman spit on the ground near her feet, not quite hitting her, but close enough. Then a child's voice cut through the quiet. Mama, can that lady braid my hair like hers? A girl, maybe 8 years old, with blonde curls and curious eyes. She'd broken away from her mother and walked right up to Mrs. Vargas. Hush, Sarah Jane. But it's so pretty. All those little braids. Can you teach me? Mrs. Vargas knelt down, eye level with the child. Your mama might not. I don't mind learning, the girl said. She reached out and touched one of Mrs. Vargas's braids. It looks like a rope. Sarah Jane! Her mother rushed forward, grabbed her daughter's hand, but something in her face wasn't quite anger, more like shame. She looked at Mrs. Vargas, really looked. I'm sorry, the woman said quietly. For everything. She pulled her daughter away, but it was different now. A crack in the wall. Father Brennan appeared in the doorway of the mission church across the street. He nodded to Luther, a silent message. They walked over. Inside, Doc Thatcher was waiting with Toby Freeman. The forge owner never came to the Protestant church, but he was here now. I've been thinking about what you said, Toby said without preamble, about silence being the same as death. Luther waited. I saw 3 men kill Juan Vargas. One wore a silver belt buckle big as a fist, scrollwork, custom made. I'd know it anywhere. He looked at Mrs. Vargas. I'm sorry I didn't speak before, ma'am. I was a coward. You were practical, she said. You'd have died for nothing. Maybe. But I'm ready to testify now, if you'll have me. It's still dangerous, Luther said. Everything's dangerous. Toby's jaw set. But there's dangerous, and then there's wrong. I'm done with wrong. Doc Thatcher spread papers on the table, 3 families worth. I did some digging. Rojas, Delgado, Moreno, all lost land in the past 18 months. All the translation errors. All had their properties auctioned to Marsh for a fraction of their value. She pointed to the dates. See the pattern. All the auctions happened within 2 weeks of the families having some kind of misfortune. Barn fires, accidents, arrests on false charges. Pressure tactics, Father Brennan said. Break them down until they can't fight. Luther studied the documents, saw the same clerk's signature on each, saw Marsh's name as the buyer, saw the pattern clear as day. We need the other families to testify, Luther said. All of them. One voice is easy to ignore. But 4? They're scared, Doc Thatcher said. I've tried talking to them. They won't risk it. What if we go together? Mrs. Vargas said. What if I ask them, not as the widow who lost, but as someone who's still fighting? They rode out that afternoon. Luther, Mrs. Vargas, and Toby. The Rojas family had a small farm 10 miles east. When they arrived, Miguel Rojas came out with a shotgun. We don't want trouble. Neither do we. Mrs. Vargas dismounted. I'm Marisol Vargas. My husband was Juan. Rojas lowered the gun an inch. I heard what happened. I'm sorry. I heard what happened to you, too. The barn fire. His face went hard. Accident. Was it? A long silence. Then his wife appeared in the doorway. Miguel, let them in. Inside, over coffee that tasted like creek water, they told their story, the translation error, the filing fee they couldn't afford, the barn burning 2 nights before their hearing, the auction that took their best land for $75. We couldn't prove the fire was set, Miguel said, but I found boot prints. 3 men. 1 set of tracks showed a heel worn on the left side, distinctive. Do you still have the documents? Luther asked. Your original grant? Hidden, my grandfather's papers. I didn't trust them to the county after... He stopped. Why? Because there's a district judge coming in 2 weeks, higher than county, federal authority. If we can show a pattern, they'll kill us before we can testify. Maybe. Mrs. Vargas leaned forward. Or maybe if we stand together, we're harder to kill than we are alone. Miguel's wife touched his hand. I'm tired of being afraid, mi amor. I'm tired of watching our children grow up thinking this is how the world works. Miguel looked at them, at his wife, at the farm he'd already lost half of. What do you need from us? Outside, riding back toward town, Mrs. Vargas said, You need my water. Luther looked at her. What? The spring. You need my land grant recognized to keep your water rights. That's why you're helping. Not charity. Survival. She didn't sound angry, just tired. Found that out after I'd already started helping, Luther said. But I won't lie. It makes the choice easier. Justice and practicality in the same direction. So, this is practical? Partly. And the other part? Luther thought about it. About rope burns and a woman standing in a town square. About 81 days and a silver belt buckle. The other part is I've spent 2 years being practical. Ranch practical, money practical, reputation practical. Haven't done one impractical thing since Sarah died. He looked at her. Turns out practical makes you dead inside. Just takes longer. Mrs. Vargas smiled, small but real. Toby was right about you. What did he say? That you're in love with me. Luther's face went hot. He said, this morning, at the forge, before you arrived. That's not... I don't... Luther stopped, started over. I respect you. That's different. Is it? They rode in silence for a while. Then she said, For what it's worth, I respect you too. The sun was setting when they reached Freeman's forge. Toby was still working, hammer ringing steady in the dusk. He looked up when they arrived. Rojas family in? They're in, Luther said. Good. Toby plunged hot iron into water, steam hissed up. Because I found something else. In Marsh's trash pile behind the land office, drafts of letters. Looks like he's planning something for the families who might testify. He handed Luther a crumpled paper. It smelled like ash and tobacco. Luther read it twice. His blood went cold. When? Soon as word gets out that people are organizing, maybe days. Mrs. Vargas read over his shoulder. We need to move faster. We need to move smarter, Luther said. And we need more help than we've got. Behind them, a rider passed on the road, flash of silver in the dying light. Marsh's belt buckle, watching them through the dusk. Luther drove his last 30 head of cattle to town on Wednesday. They were drought-thin, ribs showing, worth maybe $15 each in a good market. This wasn't a good market. The cattle buyer shook his head when he saw them. Bad time to sell, Gaines. Bad time not to. These won't fetch much. 15 a head if you're lucky, that's $4.50 for the lot. Luther's jaw tightened. He'd bought these cattle for $25 each 2 years ago. I'll take it. The buyer counted out bills, $420. Luther folded them into his pocket. Everything he had left on 4 legs, gone. No breeding stock, no future herd, just paper that wouldn't last the winter. Toby Freeman watched from across the street. When the buyer left, he walked over. What are you doing? Paying filing fees. That's your whole herd? Was my whole herd. Luther looked at the empty corral. Now it's Mrs. Vargas's legal fees? And yours? Mine? You testify you'll need to leave town fast. This covers a ticket east and starting over. Toby's face went hard. I don't need... Yes, you do. Man testifies against white land speculators in Texas. He doesn't get to stay after. Luther handed him $100. Take it, or I use my cattle for nothing. Toby took the money, slowly. You know you just killed your ranch, right? No cattle, no income. How do you pay the mortgage? I don't. Then what's the point? Luther watched dust devils spin across the empty street. Point is, I'll lose everything knowing I tried. That's better than keeping everything knowing I didn't. He walked toward the land office. The clerk was at his desk, tobacco-stained fingers working through papers. He looked up when Luther entered. Help you? Luther laid $320 on the desk. Filing fees, 4 families, Spanish land grant reinterpretations, due process for the district judge hearing. The clerk stared at the money like it was a snake. Where'd you... Sold my herd. Count it. The clerk counted slowly, kept glancing at Luther like he might take it back. When he finished, he pulled out forms. His hand shook slightly as he wrote. These are official receipts. The families, Vargas, Rojas, Delgado, Moreno, will need to present these to the judge along with their original documents. I know. The clerk slid the receipts across, met Luther's eyes. You just threw away your ranch for people you barely know. I know them well enough. Marsh won't let this stand. You understand that? You just declared war. Then we're at war. Luther took the receipts and left. Outside, the afternoon sun beat down merciless. His shadow stretched long and thin across the dust. He found Mrs. Vargas at the mission with Father Brennan and Doc Thatcher. They were organizing documents, original land grants, survey maps, testimonies, building a case one paper at a time. When he laid the receipts on the table, Mrs. Vargas went pale. You didn't. Already done. That was your cattle. She picked up the receipt with her name on it. $320? Luther, that's what it cost. He sat down, suddenly exhausted. District judge arrives in 4 days. We're ready. Father Brennan examined the receipts. This changes everything. With these, the county can't dismiss the cases on procedural grounds. The judge will have to hear the evidence. If we survive 4 days, Doc Thatcher said quietly. They all knew what she meant. Marsh had patterns, pressure tactics. Families lost barns and livestock before hearings. Witnesses got scared. Evidence disappeared. We need to organize the families, Mrs. Vargas said. Bring them together, strengthen numbers. That evening they gathered at Freeman's Forge, neutral ground where Marsh's people wouldn't dare interrupt. Rojas family, Delgado family, young couple with 3 children, Moreno family, grandfather and his widowed daughter, all holding their original land grants like sacred texts. The forge fire cast shadows on worried faces. Children played in the corner, too young to understand. Toby's anvil sat silent. We're scared, Miguel Rojas said. My barn burned. Delgado's daughter got hurt. Who's next? All of us if we stay silent, Mrs. Vargas said. She stood in the firelight, small but fierce. They killed my husband, tied me to watch. I know what these men are capable of. The families shifted, uncomfortable, guilty for their relief that it wasn't them. But here's what they didn't count on, she continued. They didn't count on us finding each other, didn't count on us keeping our documents, didn't count on witnesses. She looked at Toby. Didn't count on decent people getting tired of watching wrong things happen. Father Brennan stepped forward. I've authenticated all 4 land grants. They're legitimate. Predate Texas statehood. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo guarantees. Treaties don't mean much when men with guns decide otherwise, Moreno's daughter said. Her voice shook. My father's too old to fight. I have children to protect. Which is why we fight with law, not guns, Luther said. The district judge is federal authority, higher than county, higher than Marsh's bought men. If we present evidence, if we survive 4 days, someone muttered. Mrs. Vargas pulled out a map, the original 1845 survey. This shows all 4 properties, and it shows something else. She traced the blue line marking water. Agua Sagrada Spring, my land. It feeds through all our properties and beyond, including the ranches Marsh bought. The families leaned closer. He doesn't just want our land, she continued. He wants control of the water. In a drought year, that's control of everything. He's been systematically stealing properties upstream so he can choke out everyone downstream until they sell cheap. My God, Miguel whispered. How many properties? We count 12 so far, Doc Thatcher said. Maybe more. This isn't just greed, it's a calculated land grab built on fraud and murder. The silence stretched. Then the Delgado daughter spoke. She couldn't have been more than 25. My daughter broke her leg, she said. 3 men ran her off the road with a wagon. She was walking home from school, 9 years old. Tears ran down her face, but her voice stayed steady. I want them to pay. They will, Luther said. If we stick together. And if we don't? Miguel asked. If one family breaks, gets scared, takes a payoff? Then Marsh wins. Mrs. Vargas looked at each of them. He wins because he counted on us being too scared, too poor, too isolated to fight back. That's his power, our fear. Toby Freeman stood, walked to his anvil, picked up his hammer. I watched them kill Juan Vargas, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. April 12th, 3 men, one wore a silver belt buckle, custom-made, scrollwork pattern. I can identify him. I can testify. The family stared, a black man testifying against white landowners. It was suicide. I know what you're thinking, Toby said. Black man's word won't mean much. You're probably right, but I'm testifying anyway, because I'm done being practical, done being safe, done watching people suffer because I'm too scared to speak. He set his hammer down. The sound echoed in the forge. So here's my question for all of you. What are you done with? The grandfather Moreno stood, slowly, arthritis making it difficult. I'm done watching my granddaughter believe the world is supposed to be cruel. Mrs. Delgado, I'm done letting my daughter think broken legs are the price of going to school. Miguel Rojas, I'm done pretending burned barns are accidents. One by one they stood. They committed. Scared, but committed. Mrs. Vargas looked at Luther across the forge. Her eyes held something he couldn't quite name. Gratitude, maybe, or something deeper. 4 days, Father Brennan said. We have 4 days to keep everyone safe and get them to that courthouse. Then we'd better get started, Luther said. Outside, hoofbeats, multiple riders. The families went quiet. Luther moved to the door, hand on his revolver. 5 men on horseback, circling the forge. Not attacking, just watching. Message delivered clear as daylight. One rider wore a silver belt buckle that caught the moonlight. They circled once more, then rode off into darkness. They know we're organizing, Doc Thatcher said. Good, Mrs. Vargas said. Let them know. Let them worry for once. But Luther saw her hand shake when she said it, saw the fear underneath the courage. 4 days. Anything could happen in 4 days. The district judge arrived on Sunday morning. Judge William Harlan, federal circuit rider, 60 years old with gray beard and eyes that had seen every kind of lie men could tell. He set up court in the town square. Open air, public witness required by law. Luther stood with Mrs. Vargas and the 3 other families. Behind them, Toby Freeman, Father Brennan, Doc Thatcher, a small army of truth against a system built on lies. Marsh sat across the square with the banker and the land office clerk. Confident, smug. They'd won every fight so far. Why should today be different? Judge Harlan banged his gavel. The crowd went quiet. We're here to review 4 contested land claims: Vargas, Rojas, Delgado, Moreno. All involve disputed Spanish land grants and alleged county translation errors. He looked at the clerk. You prepared to defend the county's position? The clerk stood. Yes, Your Honor. All 4 claims were properly reviewed and found. I'll hear from the claimants first. Judge Harlan gestured to Father Brennan. You're the translator. I am, Your Honor. Father Sean Brennan, Mission Church. I've authenticated all 4 land grants. They're legitimate royal grants from 1821, properly sealed and registered under Spanish colonial law. He laid the documents on the judge's table. 4 pieces of parchment, brown with age but clear in their meaning. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, 1848, guaranteed legal recognition of all valid Spanish and Mexican land grants. These 4 qualify. But the county, he pointed to the clerk's translations, has systematically mistranslated key phrase to invalidate legitimate claims. Judge Harlan examined the documents, put on spectacles, read carefully. His face gave nothing away. Mrs. Vargas, he said, approach. She stepped forward. Luther saw her hands shake, but her voice stayed steady. Your husband died 6 months ago. You claim you've maintained continuous occupation of the land since his death? Yes, Your Honor. I've worked the land. Paid taxes when the county demanded them. Maintained the property. The county claims the land was abandoned. The county lies. Her voice rang clear. My husband was murdered. I was tied to our porch and forced to watch. The next day, the county declared the land abandoned and auctioned it for $50. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Judge Harlan banged his gavel. You have evidence of this murder? I have a witness. Toby Freeman stepped forward. Every eye in the square turned to him. A black man about to testify against white landowners. Luther saw people shift, saw hands move toward weapons. State your name, Judge Harlan said. Tobias Freeman, farrier, Freeman's Forge. You witnessed this alleged murder? I did, Your Honor. April 12th, night. I was riding home from a job. Saw 3 men at the Vargas property, saw them tie Mrs. Vargas to the porch post, watched them beat her husband, drag him into the yard. He bled out while she was forced to watch. The square erupted. Judge Harlan's gavel came down hard, 3 times. Order, Mr. Freeman, that's a serious accusation. Can you identify any of the men? One wore a silver belt buckle, custom made, big as a fist, scrollwork pattern, eagle, and crossed rifles. I'd know it anywhere. Judge Harlan's eyes moved to Marsh, to the belt buckle at his waist. Impossible to miss. Mr. Marsh, stand. Marsh stood slowly. Your Honor, this is absurd. This man is testifying under oath. Remove your belt. I will not be. Remove your belt. Marsh's face went red. He unbuckled the belt, held it up, silver buckle gleaming, eagle and crossed rifles, custom work. May I see that? Marsh handed it to the bailiff. The bailiff brought it to the judge. Judge Harlan examined it, looked at Toby. This the buckle? Yes, Your Honor, exactly. Judge Harlan set it on the table. Interesting. Continue your testimony. Toby described everything, the ropes, the beating, the 3 hours Mrs. Vargas was left tied, the riders leaving her husband to die. When he finished, the square was silent. Why didn't you report this immediately? Judge Harlan asked. Because I'm black, Your Honor. In Texas, my testimony against white men wouldn't have saved Mrs. Vargas, would have just gotten me killed. Judge Harlan nodded slowly. Noted. Mrs. Vargas, show me your wrists. She held out her arms. The rope burn scars were pale and thick, 3 inches of damaged skin on each wrist. Judge Harlan examined them without touching. Consistent with prolonged restraint. He looked at Marsh. You have anything to say, Mr. Marsh? That man is lying. I was nowhere near. We'll come back to that. Judge Harlan turned to Doc Thatcher. You have additional evidence? Doc Thatcher spread the survey map on the table. This is the original 1845 Mexican survey. Shows all 4 properties in dispute. You can see the boundaries match the land grants exactly. The county's English translations, she laid those beside it, show boundaries that are systematically shifted, reduced, altered to create ambiguity. Judge Harlan compared the documents, line by line. His face grew harder with each discrepancy. The county survey stakes were moved, Luther added. I walked Mrs. Vargas's property with a surveyor's chain. The markers are 50 yards off the original measurements. Who moved them? I'd like to know that too, Your Honor. Judge Harlan looked at the land office clerk. You signed off on all 4 auctions. You verified the translations. You collected filing fees. How much did Mr. Marsh pay you? The clerk's face went white. I don't... How much? Silence. Bailiff, arrest that man for perjury and fraud. We'll get the number later. The bailiff moved. The clerk tried to run, didn't make it 3 steps before he was in irons. Judge Harlan turned back to the documents. There's something else here. He pulled out the county's brand registry book. Mrs. Vargas, what was your husband's cattle brand? Estrella, a star. The judge flipped through the registry, stopped. This shows a different brand registered to Vargas, a Circle Vi. That's not his brand, that's not our mark. Judge Harlan's expression darkened. He compared entries. Mr. Rojas, your brand? Double R, connected. Registry shows R-bar-R, different mark. He looked at the other families, got the same answer each time. Registry didn't match their actual brands. These entries, he examined them closer. The ink ages are inconsistent. Recent entries made to look old, tea staining on the paper edges. Luther felt ice run down his spine. This was bigger than land fraud. Your Honor, he said, if the brands in the registry don't match the actual brands on the cattle, then someone's been claiming ownership of livestock that doesn't belong to them. Judge Harlan's voice was cold fury. Mr. Marsh, how many head of cattle do you currently own? I don't see how that's... Answer the question. Approximately 400 head. And how many did you own 2 years ago? Marsh's jaw tightened. Perhaps 80. That's quite an increase, especially in a drought year when everyone else is losing stock. Judge Harlan gestured to the Rojas family. Bring your cattle, the ones still bearing your brand. Miguel Rojas went to his wagon, led forward 3 head. They bore the double R mark. Connected, clear as day. Judge Harlan opened the registry. According to this, those cattle belong to Clayton Marsh, R-bar-R brand, registered to Marsh Enterprises. That's not possible. Those are my... Exactly. Judge Harlan stood. Mr. Marsh, you're under arrest for land fraud, cattle theft, forgery of public documents, and conspiracy to commit murder. The square erupted. Marsh's face went purple. You can't... This is federal overreach. This is federal law. Your brand registry fraud constitutes interstate cattle theft. Some of these animals were sold across territory lines. That makes it my jurisdiction. He gestured to the U.S. Marshal who'd been standing quietly at the edge of the square. Take him. The marshal moved fast, had Marsh in irons before he could react. The banker tried to slip away, didn't make it far. You too, Judge Harlan said. Conspiracy. We'll sort out how deep this goes. He turned to the 4 families. Your land grants are legitimate. Your properties are restored effective immediately. The county will issue new deeds, proper ones, within 30 days. Any questions? Mrs. Vargas looked like she might faint. Miguel Rojas was crying. The Delgado daughter clutched her children. Judge Harlan banged his gavel one last time. This court is adjourned, and if I find out anyone interferes with these families' rights going forward, I'll be back. Federal marshals tend to remember faces. The crowd dispersed slowly, stunned. Luther stood with Mrs. Vargas, watching Marsh being led away. The silver belt buckle caught the sunlight one last time. It's over, she whispered. Not quite, Judge Harlan said. He'd approached without them noticing. Mrs. Vargas, your property includes the Agua Sagrada spring. Do you understand what that means? I own the water rights. You own the primary water source for 5 ranches, including Mr. Gaines here. He looked at Luther. That puts you in an interesting position. Luther met the judge's eyes. Whatever arrangement Mrs. Vargas wants to make, I'll honor it. See that you do. Legal water rights have started wars in this territory. He tipped his hat. Good day to you both. 2 days later, Luther and Mrs. Vargas rode to the boundary between their properties. The surveyor's stake stood there, old wood, weathered, marking a line that didn't need to exist anymore. She dismounted, stood looking at it. The sun was setting, painting the desert gold and red. Judge Harlan says I own the water, she said. You do. Which means you need to negotiate rights. Legally. I suppose I do. She turned to face him. I'm not pretty, Mr. Gaines. Luther's breath caught. He'd been waiting for this, dreading it and wanting it in equal measure. My face is scarred, she continued. My reputation is ruined. I'm Mexican, in a white man's territory. Half the town still thinks I'm a squatter who got lucky. I've noticed. What could I possibly offer you? Luther stepped closer, not crowding, just present. That's fine, ma'am. I need honest, not fancy. The words hung between them. She smiled, small but real. That's it? That's your answer? That's my answer. He pulled the boundary stake from the ground, tossed it aside. Don't need a line between us, if you'll have me. Have you? Her voice shook. Luther, you lost your herd for me. Your ranch is mortgaged to men who hate you now. You've got 81 days and no way to pay. What exactly am I getting? A man who'll stand when standing matters? Who'll fight when fighting's right? Who'll lose everything before he'll lose himself? He met her eyes. And a partner, equal share, equal say. Your land, my land, our land, if that's what you want. She was quiet for a long time. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of creosote and dust. The judge forgave your mortgage, she said. During the investigation, found out the banker was involved in the fraud. Your debt's gone. I know. So you're not losing the ranch. No, ma'am. Which means you don't need my water rights to survive. No, ma'am. Then why? Because I love you. The words came out rougher than he meant. Have since you drank from my canteen like it was the first kindness you'd seen in months. Since you stood in that town square and told the truth when lying would have saved you. Since you learned to shoot and organize families and refused to be a victim even when the world wanted you to be one. Her eyes filled. You barely know me. I know you're honest. I know you're brave. I know you fight for what's right even when it costs everything. He stepped closer. I know that's more than most people manage in a lifetime. And I know I want to spend whatever time I've got left trying to be half as good as you already are. She was crying now, silent tears running down scarred skin. I'm broken, Luther. So am I. Maybe that's the point. He held out his hand. Maybe broken things fit together better, got edges that match. She took his hand, let him pull her close. Their first embrace was careful, tentative, two people learning they were allowed to touch without pain. Yes, she whispered against his chest. Yes. Yes, I'll have you. Yes to partnership. Yes to equal share. Yes to everything. He pulled back enough to see her face. I've got something for you. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the Saint medal. Silver, tarnished, warm from being carried close. This was Sarah's, her grandmother's before that. It's seen a lot of living, a lot of dying too. He held it out. I've been carrying it like guilt, like proof I failed her, but I think she'd want you to have it. New beginnings, clean slate. Mrs. Vargas took it carefully, turned it over in her hands. Are you sure? I'm sure. She fastened it around her neck. The silver caught the dying sunlight. Luther walked to his horse, came back with something wrapped in canvas. One more thing. He unwrapped it, a branding iron, the Estrella mark, her husband's brand, her legacy. Thought we'd rebrand my cattle, partnership share, legal and proper. Her hand went to her mouth. Luther, your mark, your land, our herd, he smiled. That work for you? She nodded, couldn't speak. They stood there as the sun dropped below the horizon. The boundary stake lay in the dust where Luther had thrown it. Useless now, the line erased. In the distance, smoke rose from Freeman's forge. Toby was working late. The anvil rang clear and steady, honest sound, honest work. Closer, the families were rebuilding. Rojas repairing his barn, Delgado planting crops, Moreno fixing fence line, all of them with proper deeds now, legal and binding. And somewhere underground, the Agua Sagrada spring fed cool water through the earth, through Mari's land and Luther's, connecting them the way they'd always been connected, the way honest things connect when you stop pretending otherwise. Tomorrow we'll brand the cattle, Luther said. Tomorrow, Mari agreed. She took his hand. But tonight, can we just stand here? Yes. So they did. Two broken people who'd found their edges matched, watching stars come out over land that was finally, legally theirs. The desert wind carried the smell of rain, not yet, but coming, soon. Summer of '78 taught some hard lessons in Esperanza. The drought broke 3 weeks after the trial. Rain came gentle at first, then steady, filling the arroyos and softening the ground that had cracked like old leather. The Agua Sagrada spring ran clear and cold, feeding down through Mari's land into Luther's, like it always had, like it was meant to. Marsh went to federal prison in Santa Fe. 20 years for fraud, theft, conspiracy. The banker got 15. The land office clerk turned witness and got 5. One by one, the forged papers got straightened out. Not every family got their land back. Some had already moved on, started over elsewhere. But enough did that you could feel something shift in the territory, like the ground settling after a long shake. Luther and Mari married that fall. Quiet ceremony at the mission, just the folks who'd stood with them. Toby Freeman came. Doc Thatcher brought wildflowers from her garden. The Mexican families brought food enough to feed half the county. Father Brennan performed the service in Spanish and English both. They ran the ranch together after that, his cattle wearing her Estrella brand, both their names on the deed. They registered it proper in the new county records, legal and binding, witnessed and sealed. Folks still ask sometimes what made Luther risk everything for a woman he barely knew. Some say it was the water rights, practical calculation. Others say love at first sight, romantic notion. Truth is simpler than that, I reckon. He saw someone honest in a world built on lies, saw someone standing when standing was dangerous, and he decided that was worth more than comfort, more than safety, more than reputation, honest over fancy, every time. That's how you build something that holds. The rain kept falling, the land healed, and two people who thought they were too broken for new beginnings learned different.